Good afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. There are a variety of legal remedies available when it comes to resolving conflicts or disputes. Today we're going to learn about resolving disputes in agriculture using the Vermont Agriculture Mediation Program. Over the past several years, the program has helped hundreds of farmers, lenders, and citizens reach agreement on a variety of agricultural issues, including regulatory compliance, farm loans, or conflicts involving farmer and neighbor. With me this afternoon are Bob Parsons, the agricultural economist with UVM Extension, and Matt Strasberg, the executive director of the Vermont Agriculture Mediation Program. Thanks for being with us. Bob, what is this Vermont's history with resolving ag disputes?
Well, a lot of it we've tried to do is we like to pretend that we're good neighbors, and disputes are kind of under the surface. But we've had a lot of disputes over the years, and there's times that myself and other extension educators, we kind of wished we'd have somebody that was really skilled at this, that we could kind of advise some things on to, because there's conflicts sometimes in family transfers, but there's also a lot of business conflicts, you know, in the financial area particularly, or maybe some legal disputes between neighbors. And we're entering into a new world of this with possibility of a whole new set of regulations coming up with the cleanup of Lake Champlain. And so the existence of a service is very rewarding to us as well as to the benefactors of the states, because we can kind of recommend somebody to go to. And a lot of this goes back to, if we take a look back in the 1980s, you know, the farm conflict in the Midwest, where land prices dropped more than 50 to 75% over a 6-year period. That caused a lot of financial stress, and similar to what we did here in 2009, when we have the cycles now in the dairy prices, when there's up, everyone's getting along real good. But you know, whenever we get in the depths of it, we have a lot of farms that can't cash flow. And that creates problems with their creditors, you know, the taxes, I would say. So there's a lot of internal stress that comes with that, and people can get rid of a lot of that internal stress if they had a service that could maybe help them on that.
And so, Matt, can you explain what mediation is and how it's different from arbitration?
Well, mediation is an informal way to resolve problems using an impartial person to assist in the negotiations. And let me elaborate on a few of those things.
Okay.
It's informal in that just as often we sit around a kitchen table as we do in a conference room in an office building. It's a voluntary process in that the mediator is not there to say one party's right or one party's wrong, or to impose a solution upon the parties. The mediator is there to facilitate the conversation, to help them generate options and help them evaluate the options, but ultimately the decision-making rests in the parties. They choose whether they're better off with the options that are being discussed and they want to have a settlement, or they walk away essentially in the same position they were before the mediation started. Mediation is also confidential in that essentially it's Vegas rules. Whatever's said in the room stays in the room.
And so is part of the battle, or the big part of the battle, just getting all the parties together in one spot?
Absolutely. So much can happen when you bring the right people to the table, all focused on trying to resolve an issue. And so in mediation, whether the issue is with creditors or lenders or USDA agencies, we're all sitting there focused together trying to resolve the issue.
And so what are the advantages of mediation?
Well, the mediator is essentially like a negotiation coach. So imagine you're having someone there trying to, number one, put you at ease, but number two, try to work with you so that the options that you suggest might be something acceptable to the other party. The mediator has talked to both sides, usually before the mediation, and so they have an idea of what might work based on those conversations. Mediation also repairs relationships. So, you know, imagine if you go to court, if you're basically putting on boxing gloves, and you know what's the relationship like after going through that kind of process? You can't shake hands with the boxing gloves on. Mediation is there to try to resolve the issues and get the parties to, you know, Vermont's a small state. The agricultural community within within Vermont is small. We all have to get along. Nobody wants to do anything to harm anyone else's. We all rely upon each other. So keeping relationships is really positive is really important. Mediation also reduces transaction costs. We're not generally hiring lawyers. We're sitting there together trying to work things out. As I mentioned, often around the kitchen table, which is a conducive atmosphere for that.
Well, Bob, it sounds great, but what are some of the sort of hurdles that you face when you try to get a mediation going?
Well, sometimes people say, that's this is a private matter. They don't even bring it to anyone else's attention. The other part of it is, well, we're dealing with the banks, and they just want their money. There is no room here for negotiation, and so you have to realize, even one, that there is a possibility of mediation, and two, most people don't know there is this mediation service available. And not only is it just a mediation service, it's from the USDA, so it has some orientation toward farming. So there are people involved with it that have agricultural background.
And so it is possible for a farmer who's having some financial difficulty to sit down with the banker or the lending institution or whoever else that they may owe money to and work out a deal?
That's what usually has to be done, because the bankers don't want to repossess the farm. They would rather have you there repaying a loan than them having to come in and having to liquidate the farm and put the farmer out of business. I mean, a lot of legal costs involved in that. They would rather have an ongoing business. And so in that aspect, but sometimes you have to get, as Matt mentioned, the right people to be doing the talking, and getting the farmer also to realizing that this is a real possibility too.
If I may add to that, one of the most common situations we run into are with farmers who are having financial problems. And if you're having a financial problem, it usually is widespread. So you may be meeting your obligations to pay your loan to the bank, or you may be behind a little bit. But that's because if you're behind to the bank, you're often behind to the unsecured creditors, the feed dealers, the equipment dealers, the utility companies, and all that kind of stuff. And what mediation enables us to do is sometimes we get all the parties together and work and try to work things out in a global way. Other times we isolate each problem and work on it one by one. So for example, if it's a farmer trying to apply for a new loan, it may be that the bank is reluctant to issue a new loan because of these outstanding credit situations. So we may try to resolve these issues one by one with the different creditors. And in those kind of situations, the farmer is often getting charged quite a bit of interest, which is sort of understandable. I mean, the creditor, feed dealer, equipment dealer, they're not banks. They don't want to be banks. They just want to get paid for their services. But on the other hand, often the interest charged is such that it's very hard for the farmer to catch up. So in mediation, what we're often able to do is get the farmer to figure out an installment payment plan that is affordable to the farmer and at the same time works for the creditor. And mediation is flexible enough in that we can tailor the solutions to fit the exact financial circumstances. If we're working with a maple syrup producer, they may have a large cash inflow in the spring after the syrup. If we're working with a dairy farmer, we might look at how many cows they're milking and how many their cows are going to freshen at a certain point, and try to tailor the payments so that they work with the farmer's cash flow.
Are farmers surprised that this is possible to do?
I think yes.
I think farmers, I'm not sure if I'd say they're surprised, but I would say that typically farmers, it's obviously a very demanding job, and they have a million things going on. They work as long hours as anybody out there. And the last thing they want to do is come home and have to deal with these kind of financial situations. And so, unfortunately, and I'm not saying this about farmers in particular, it's human nature. You focus on the things you can do, and sometimes there are bills, and you don't have the money to go around to pay all the bills that month. And so often what happens is they just get ignored. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, these problems don't go away. And what we hope are that farmers and creditors, we're a neutral party. mediators sometimes joke we're like Switzerland. We try to we get along with everybody. But I'm hoping that farmers or creditors will call us and contact us early, because we're a free service and we're there to help and there to resolve these kind of issues. And we think it's a very effective way to do so.
And it's also, too, I guess, from a creditor's standpoint, getting paid something is better than not getting paid at all. Or at least understanding what the situation is maybe will make it easier to be more flexible.
Exactly. And farmers, they're hardworking, they're honest people, they want to pay back their debts, but at the same time, sometimes you can't afford to pay all. And every situation is different, but in some situations, the creditors might make a compromise on interest, whatever that may be. In really challenging situations where farmers might be also consulting with a bankruptcy attorney, that may be a very different dynamic. In those situations, creditors might quickly understand that if it goes to bankruptcy, they may be looking at a nickel or a dime on the dollar, and that they need to make a bigger compromise. It doesn't happen frequently, but we work at a solution that fits the circumstance.
And there are some interesting different case studies on your website, and one is wetland determination and farmers dispute with regulatory agencies over wetland issues, and I suppose that's going to become more common, would you say?
I think it is.
Yeah.
We've already had a number of conflicts with that, with reclassification of wetlands and the further restrictions that may be put on them, and we don't know really what the state of Vermont is going to come down with for trying to limit the phosphorus inflow from ag lands into Lake Champlain. We just don't know, and that might be elimination of all farming of wetland areas, or even taking hay off. And what looks like a wetland in April to a farmer, who's farmed that all their life, they say it's not wet in July.
Right.
They may have their opinion from farming that, but we go by the Army Corps engineers and NRCS classifications of what is a wetland, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that don't agree with those.
And so what about farmer-neighbor dispute over water protection?
Oh boy, that's a good one, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And we may I have no idea what we're going to run into in the coming future, but I think we're going to have more and more conflicts as we get this, we're hearing talk that things are going to be tough on small farms as well as medium farms as well as large farms. And there's probably going to be people thinking that they should be exempt, or that guy over my neighbor's doing more pollution than I am. And you don't know. I think we're going to see some conflicts, especially between even not just different farmers, but also farmers and their neighbors over who is supplying that type of phosphorus to the lake. And I suspect we're going to have a lot of disagreements on what the regulations mean and what the impact is going to be, and due to the way the enforcement. And I think mediation that has been in the agricultural arena for a while is probably going to be called on to help resolve some of these conflicts.
Are there situations where mediation is not appropriate?
Well, of course. There are circumstances when you absolutely need a legal ruling from a judge. That, for example, there's a determination that needs to happen. One party believes A and one party believes B, and that there's no way they're going to get together to find a solution until that issue is resolved. You also wouldn't mediate over deeply held personal beliefs, but that doesn't really apply in the agricultural sector. But the most important thing I would say, mediation applies where you have any type of a business transaction, where you have those personal dynamics that sometimes make the relationship challenging. And one of the important things is that it's always better to mediate early. And people often procrastinate, human nature again, or they wait until the 11th hour, and then we get the phone call, and it's the feed dealer won't deliver, the utility company just shut us off, all that kind of stuff.
To be a crisis.
And the earlier you get in, it's when parties are more flexible, the relationship hasn't been damaged as much, and there are more options that might be possible to resolve things.
And so, Matt, how can people find out about the Agriculture Mediation Project?
They can contact us by looking at our website, which is www.vtamp.org, or call us on the phone, 802-583-1100.
I want to thank you both for joining me today.
Thank you for having us.
That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. We'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.